With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And it's all happening. This is the world today. Let me tell you, normally I don't have a scotch between Monday and Friday. Tonight I'm breaking every rule possible. I've earned it. It's been truly a wild ride. Now, to bring some sanity and some peace to the outfit, just to mankind, Anna Mcloughlin. Anna, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
It's been a pretty wild ride, let me tell you. I saw you pop up 1 hour early. I thought, oh my God, what's happening? You're coming onto a country show.
Yes, well, we've switched over to daylight saving time and you guys stay behind, don't you? Or just stay normal day, right?
Nothing happens with us. It's Queensland. It's still 1876.
Hey, but at least you're enjoying no time zone changes.
Well, our chickens, apparently, they get affected with the time change. And the cows don't like daylight saving, so go tell me how that would work. We want to talk about long COVID. You've written an article about a case of long COVID. Myself personally, I don't, and I was told by others too, that I don't believe long COVID, but there's been both sides of the coin here, and both have merit. So you tell me, is there a thing really called long COVID, or is it just a bit of science fiction?
That's a very good question. I think what we've been looking at is an article that was written in One News this week, which was that a 24-year-old has been offered rest home care in New Zealand because she's suffering so severely from long COVID. And what was pointed out by my amazing team is that 49 times long COVID was mentioned, but there wasn't a mention or a discussion about the fact that it could be long vax because they are all vaccinated people. I mean, ideally, an article would provide useful information such as they all got COVID in 2020 and this was before the vaccine, but it didn't produce anything like that. So long COVID, we question it's probably more long vaccine.
Yet we see government, though, and this is the part of the people that I'm referring to, and some very good scientists, they're convinced it's long COVID. I agree with you about it's long vax. And it's interesting how, again, and I have to be careful not to be too much of an activist here because, well, I'm not an activist. I just can't stand people who tell lies. But just when you think we're getting through with the evidence, scientific facts, the common denominator and stuff like that, they sort of swing back to, maybe it's not the vax, maybe it's long COVID. Here's another question for you without putting you on the spot. And many people have said it. I believe there was a virus, a COVID virus. I think it was no different than the flu. And in fact, if you look at the flu, 1 year it killed 37 something million in the world, and the next year it killed nobody. COVID did. So that itself would have to insinuate that there was a discrepancy with the truth. I'm being quite polite. Do you believe, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here at all, because you'll be labelled. Do you believe there was a COVID virus?
Well, if I go back to what Professor Angus Dalgleish has written a book about, he believes that there was a specific virus that was edited in the labs in Wuhan. So that was potentially released or it was leaked, whatever the case. He believes that there is something that came out of a lab in Wuhan that was engineered with slight edits in its genomic sequencing that produced something that made people very ill. So whether you can call it a virus or whether you can call it an infection or whether you can call it who knows what, other people like to discuss, it still made people sick, but it also didn't have quite the significant effect that it was portrayed in the media.
Yeah, but never let a good crisis go to waste. I mean, there's one thing happening in China at the moment, and of course, when they showed from China those people just dropping dead, lying on the ground, they've got now. It's a photo. I can't get rid of the image. It's on the one of our news sites here, and they've gone absolutely nutso with the insecticide, with the spray, because it's this new virus is carried by mozzies. It must be a world first that mosquitoes carry a virus. And I mean, and, I'm just wondering, and you might have seen that pic too. There is truly, it looks like fog. I mean, and how would they breathe? So here we have, the cure is probably going to kill more than the actual, the disease.
Yeah.
But it's nuts, and it's like, wow, have I been smoking something? No, I don't do that. Have I had a drink? Because it just looks almost like the hysteria that preceded the lockdowns and the world going absolutely upside down with COVID.
Yeah, well, you get a lot of hysteria with that. I even saw a news article that they had introduced martial law with a specific strain of mosquitoes in a US state. So people weren't allowed outside of the house after 5 p.m. because that was the peak time for the mosquitoes to be biting. And so I wonder, how did humanity survive for as long as it has without these interventions? I mean, is there any point in looking at a natural immunity and the body's response to be able to protect itself?
I know you so again. I mean, how dare you speak common sense? In fact, though, the World Health Organization, they've been around since caves, and instead of lockdowns, they had knockouts. They had clubs, and boom, you're dead, but you didn't have that terrible disease. And maybe we're giving the government, including your government, an idea. Ah, we'll go back to the good old days and have a club.
Perhaps not. But yes, it certainly is an interesting thing where sometimes it looks like what they are providing as the cure
Mm.
for these mosquitoes is potentially a whole lot worse than the actual issue that they're attempting to fight.
Have you noticed? I think what had happened is that they released a virus that dimmed the brain, and because I mean I'm seeing all sorts of friends and relatives who are getting all sorts of ailments, and I'm seeing and you would like to say to them, there's a common denominator here. You never had this before, and it's not just one or two; it's a whole bunch of them, and you think, man, oh man. I mean, there's a friend is very young and has heart problems. So you think think maybe that the common denominator is looking at these people straight in the face, and they're not going to acknowledge it. And it's funny because it's not funny. It's very serious because if you look at that common denominator from A to B, what is it? It's the jab. They know that it causes all sorts of things, an increase in cancer. Some say up to by colon cancer by 8,300%. There is an increase in cancer in younger people. Myocarditis is documented. People are just dropping off. That is documented. They're maimed or whatever. And the population, I don't care what anybody says, the majority of the population, they sort of think, oh, there's a bit of truth there, but it's not really, maybe. And they don't want to think about it. And I think we have to think about it because otherwise we're going to get these ridiculous things from government about long COVID. I ask a question
Yeah.
of you, a very serious question, and this is the question that we should be asking about long COVID. Can you tell me, Anna, look at me straight in the eye, can you tell me, is long COVID a foot long or is it 2 foot long?
Well, how long is a piece of string? I mean, we've got people who are sick, suffering, and dying, and we get messages every single day on our website or in our emails or even on social media about horrific stories that are happening to New Zealanders in particular from our perspective, but across the world. And I mean, there's been a story come out this week that a new report from an association, of salaried medical specialists reveals Kiwis' health is on the decline and what's causing it. But they haven't labelled a cause, but my team's observations, and that it's particularly in young people, they are much, much sicker than since the COVID vaccine rollout. And that's a huge issue that needs to be addressed. People can't just gloss over things and just pretend that, oh, well, we're sponsored by Big Pharma, so we just have to ignore the actual truth. These people need help. They need to get to the source of the problem to be able to work to fix it. And that isn't being provided in our nation and also in Australia. It needs to happen now because this can prevent more suffering, particularly for young people going forward.
Yeah, I totally agree again. We're agreeing on most things, but it's not going to change. It's people, that common denominator. What was it? Oh, we gave everybody a jab or 2 jabs. Some have had 6. Now, here's the thing for you. They say we believe that the vaccine is going to protect us. We're going to be safe, all that sort of stuff. Why do they have to keep getting boosters? Oh, because it doesn't work.
Yeah,
So,
the efficacy wanes. The efficacy wanes. Yeah. I don't think anything is going to change until we as a society start to acknowledge and have those conversations basically from the ground up. We need to be able to work to expose this through the media, but we need to have conversations offline that aren't affected by an algorithm. Each and every day, we have to get that courage up and make a stand and say no, because this all ends when we say no. The truth can be exposed if we start to talk out about it.
or if we don't talk about it, and that's what there's either the legacy media or government will come full out and bombard you with information, like the measles. Get the measles vaccine. Get that. Get that. It's going to kill you. Going to kill you. You're going to become pimply and all sorts of things, or they say nothing. And if we come out and we'll say that evidence shows that, for example, the vaccine, inverted commas, does enormous damage, they're not going to report it. They're not going to talk about it. And if they don't talk about it, the general population doesn't talk about it. So I think the not talking about it also is a problem. And I don't know what the answer is, by the way, Anna. I mean, what do we do?
We just keep on keeping on. We keep going to the authorities and letting them know on public record that these issues exist. So they can't sort of claim plausible deniability in the future. Then we go out and we just speak to one person, 10 people, and then hopefully those 10 people go and share it with another 10 people. And you take that movie, there was an amazing movie that's just come out this week, and they were actually talking about how it could almost be viral, but if each person starts to share it and then shares it on. There is potential for change, but we all have to dig deep and actually stick on our big kids' pants and really start to rise up.
The viral bit, they'll work out a vaccine for that.
Yes, they will. They'll probably stick a computer virus in there to stop it.
We will, it'll be like a plague of Daleks. We will destroy. We will destroy. Now we have to keep this serious. Tell us about the article. What you discovered in your article.
Well, no, these were both news articles that were released this week. And the thing that we discovered is the fact that no New Zealand media outlet in the mainstream is willing to address these issues. And I know that I've seen a few articles come out of Australia, even on some mainstream media news outlets that are actually questioning the COVID narrative, the lockdowns, the vaccine mandates, saying that mistakes were had. In New Zealand, they do not discuss this at all. It is absolute silence or praise for the leadership of the COVID response. And I find that really, really disturbing.
Yeah, it is too. It's a bit like a cult.
Yes.
Well, it is. I mean, so many of you New Zealanders are leaving, going anywhere but New Zealand. Your country will become a cult. if you don't stop them from leaving. I mean, and one way of keeping people there is to treat your citizens with respect and level up with them, tell them the truth. But there has to be a reason. If people are leaving New Zealand, take away the economic stuff, which is happening everywhere. If they're coming over here, they're jumping out of a fry pan into the fire. But if they tell them the truth and government starts acting as if they care about you, I would dare say, I'd bet you 10 cents to nothing that the people won't leave. They'll stay there.
That's potentially so. It might be time for politicians to start putting the New Zealand people first rather than the lobbyists.
Shock horror. How dare you say that? See, they're going to label you as normal.
Yes, potentially so. Sensible.
Tell us about the 24-year-old too, if you wouldn't mind.
So this 24-year-old, she's actually fully vaccinated and most likely boosted, and she is really, really suffering. She has incredible fatigue, all sorts of issues with her health that were discussed in the article, but she just can't get better, and she's not able to access any healthcare really because they don't really know what's causing it. They're not looking into the root cause of this issue, so that's where their concern lies.
Just before we go any further, I just want to let people know who are in chat saying there's no feed on the website. There is. I'm looking at it. So just hit refresh. Although if you can't see us or hear us, you're not going to hear that message. So if you hear it later than after the normal time, don't do that because it'll mess up your computer. So don't blame me for it. They've had too many drinks far too early in the morning. So out of all what we've talked about, is there anything positive about New Zealand and the health system and their approach to the jibby jab that went nuts with COVID?
There's nothing positive coming out of it at the moment.
Good on you.
I mean, we work every day to expose what's gone on and bring truth and awareness, and also provide help and healing for people as well. Well, my colleagues do. I work in the communications, but it's a really difficult process to be able to break through that cognitive dissonance as well as the heavy censorship that we face.
Yeah, it's a depressing summary there, or viewpoint, but I do agree with you, and it's the same here too. And you know, I love my family and all that sort of stuff, but they're on this mission. To look like a pincushion. And you have to ask yourself, if you have to keep getting boosters, as with the flu, it says it's not working. And surely there's another alternative to look at. Or do they just keep trying and trying and trying until it does work and they're no longer here? Well, you've depressed me a little bit because I thought you'd have some sort of positiveness there.
Look, we will break through. We will make progress one step at a time. I think one thing that is really important to my team is to get the government out of the consultation room and let doctors do their jobs, do what they've been trained to do, and don't have bureaucrats sitting in an office up in a tall building dictating medical regulation and medical policy and practice, as well as overseas interests that are funding this nonsense in order to make a profit. We need to put people over profits, and that needs to have a change.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's I'm agreeing with a lot of people today. But they're all telling the truth. That's what it's all about. But anybody who wants to disagree, wants to be part of the show, please do. And we're not going to spit at you and say bad things. Maybe we will say bad things about you behind your back, but this is a platform for free speech, and that's all we want. And by the way, the free speech they tried everything to shut it down, especially when we needed free speech. And if somebody wants to find out more about NZDSOS, how do they do that?
Well, you can find us at nzdsos.com, and we are on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and Rumble, and Telegram, and other platforms. It's just at NZDSOS.
Yep, thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Anna Mcloughlin there, Communications Advisor for NZDSOS. Just going to make a quick mention. I'm looking at the chat here. Now, Holly, if somebody could let Holly know that, just hit refresh. She mentions that we have YouTube on the homepage. no longer there. We haven't got YouTube. What we have is we have Rumble. We're going to Rumble. So Rumble is working. I'm looking at it at the moment. I can see Robert Redford there. That's me, sorry. But anyway, so have a look, hit refresh. You should see Rumble. It is working. It is live. We've been going since for 1 hour and 30 minutes. And so you've missed out on all the good stuff. John Huston singing, Anna Mcloughlin talking, and me just being me, which is fantastic. This is The World Today.
We're today's news talk, The World Today.
And welcome back. Our chatterboxes are having a breakdown. I'm sure Holly's launched that laptop through that window. And hopefully she can put it back together again. Sorry, Holly. And little Miss L, yes, we have been on for the last hour and a half. But you can go to YouTube and you can go to Rumble about an hour after, less than an hour after we finish. And you can see all of it, minus most of the ads too, by the way, in its full glory. Robert Redford. You know, when I went to the US, I kept going there and they kept saying, "Oh, you look like Robert Redford." I hope they don't think so now. He's not here. I just want to talk about our next guest. Adel Alexander Darwish is a Westminster-based British political journalist, a veteran Fleet Street reporter, author, historian, broadcaster and political commentator, political editor, London Bureau Chief for World Media, the Middle East Magazine, lifestyle app, fabnews.com and so forth. He's well respected throughout the world. Adel, thank you for joining us, sir. We just need.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Good morning here and good evening your time.
Good evening, yes. And you're up bright and early and you're looking extremely dapper, I have to say.
On my way to the House of Commons.
Oh, excellent, good on you. There's nothing common about that house. Tell me, have things changed fundamentally in the Middle East as portrayed by Donald Trump and others, or is this part of the Donald Trump make-believe scenario?
I think although I'm a little bit optimistic, I actually would go for the latter. It is a part of the Donald Trump show, his own vanity, which sometimes if you play it right, you can get some positive outcome. I mean, a ceasefire, which we thought was unachievable, it was achieved. He managed to turn the screws on Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, and he managed to get people committed to rebuilding Gaza. That said, what is going to happen next is not clear. The devil is always in the details. Although he's bringing a panel of expertise like Tony Blair, who's got experience in settling the Northern Ireland, which was actually sectarian and religious. And what's going on now between Israel and Hamas is sectarian, religious. So that's one aspect of it. But how we implement it on the ground, it's actually meant to be seen. And that's, again, what Donald Trump did not mention to please the Arab side, the two-state solution. And there's not much appetite for it among Israelis. I know even probably some of the surrounding countries do not like to see, at the moment, an independent Palestinian state.
Can you tell me what you expect next from after the fanfare and basically a hostage swap? What do you expect next?
Well, what we expect next is actually some kind of mechanism to restore law and order in Gaza. That's unclear. Hamas has been going on a rampage of the terrorist group, and they are killers. They still have got rockets in their bunkers, in their tunnels, which they can threaten Israel, and they can go up in flame again. But there's no mechanism of actually putting boots on the ground. What ideally would be some kind of countries where they have no colonial history there, like Norwegians, like Indians, and some from Muslim and Arab countries go there, and with American protection from the air, to disarm Hamas, or at least implement law and order. And that's the first step. The second step is to reach some kind of an agreement. Maybe Hamas can evolve, something come out of it that's actually unarmed, not rigid Islamists want to destroy Israel and become like a political party and send the armed men into exile. That's what I would like to see. That would be the ideal situation. But also, it's easier to implement than the long-term solution.
Did Netanyahu play a big part of this, or because some have said he was isolated, and I find that hard to believe. But what's your thoughts?
Well, Bibi Netanyahu has got some kind of a little problem, which is his brother Yanni, who is a national hero, who actually died in the raid in Entebbe, and his father, Professor Netanyahu, who's Jablonski's sort of disciple, very right wing, and Bibi wants to be a hero. He doesn't, he can't fill his brother's shoes. That's on his psychology. But he plays some right cards. I mean, he was foolishly, he tried to target Hamas in Qatar on the 9th of September, but with the law of unintended consequences, actually something positive came out of it. That President Trump pressurized him because enough is enough. The Qataris and other states came round and said, we should do something about it. And Hamas realized they are not safe anywhere. So that is actually was something, it was unintended, but became positive that he played. But now the worry is, if he's got a court case about corruption, if the court case goes against him and if he ends up in jail, well, how are we going to jail the hero who brought the hostages back? And that can cause some problems inside Israel, because the electoral system, although Ben-Gurion wants it to be like the British system, it is proportional representation, and it's very difficult after the election to find a government that can implement a coherent policy.
Tell me about Qatar. What is the relationship with Qatar now? And it's been damaged. Can they repair it?
Well, I think Qatar plays sort of a mysterious, not exactly mysterious, but a confusing role for the Middle East leader. I mean, we saw them liaising with Egypt, although there's no love lost between them. The Qatar has been backing and supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. It's a terrorist organization, and it's also the granddaddy of Hamas. Hamas used to be the Gaza branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a fascist Nazi Islamist organization, has been hosted by Qatar. It's no secret that when Prime Minister Cameron was in power, he commissioned a report by Sir John Jenkins on the activity of Muslim Brotherhood in Britain around the world. And the Qataris actually pressurized Cameron's not to publish the report on full. So that's actually some negative role. The positive role is because they host the Taliban in Afghanistan, they host the Hamas, they host other organizations. America and the West use them in a way of negotiating. So it's somehow the connection between the police and the mafia on the ground.
What's your thoughts on the peace plan?
Well, the peace plan, as I said, is very difficult to actually understand what the end game is. The Arabs wanted a two-state solution. The 7th of October 2023 proved the majority of Israelis that cannot happen because the Israelis under Oslo vacated Gaza, dismantled settlements. There was no Israeli presence yet. Hamas did what they did. So the argument of the right that every time Israel vacates a piece of land, give it to the Palestinian, then terrorism flourishes there and threatens Israel. On the Arab side, the public opinion is still anti-Israel. Even in Egypt and Jordan, when we have peace treaties with Israel, still public opinion is just leave it there. We don't want to normalize with them. And there is lack of understanding of of democracy in Israel. Israel is the only democracy in the region. So in order to get a coalition in Israel that would implement that final aim of the peace plan, then the Arabs and in Egypt and surrounding countries have to convince the Israeli electorate that they want to live in peace. They have to give up the so-called Palestine from the river to the sea, which means the destruction of the Jewish state. At the moment, there is not enough numbers within Israeli voters convinced that this desire and this willingness exists on the Arab side, and that is a major, major block for the implementation of the plan in full for everyone to live in peace.
Yesterday we had just on Mokim European and also Dr. Frank Romano. And what came out of that was a peace plan we have. It included a number of countries, but they were both critical because it didn't include the Palestinians. So we had all these other countries around agreeing to a particular peace plan. But it would seem that the Palestinians were not part of that peace plan. If that is the case, how can they call it a peace plan with the Palestinians? Because surely to goodness they would be included as part of that peace plan.
The critics, especially sort of the liberal left commentators, were saying there was two parties were absent, the Israelis and Hamas. Well, Hamas is not recognized by anybody who's sitting in the room. However, Mahmoud Abbas, who is the president of the Palestinian National Authority, were present there. He didn't actually sign, but he was actually present there, and he's in agreement. I mean, he's letting countries like Egypt, like Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain, and so on, speak on their behalf. He would be included. The question is, how can actually physically you link Gaza and the West Bank with Israeli acceptance? That is actually the sticking point there. And as I said, I'm not very optimistic, but it can be overcome. I mean, as I said, Tony Blair and his institute did a great deal of research and work within the White House for this plan to actually come up with. But the voices now saying, well, Tony Blair is not welcome in the region for two reasons. One, the Iraq war legacy, when he went with President Bush there on false pretense. And the other thing is the colonial history in Palestine mandate Britain, so we don't want some kind of colonial rule. But like it or not, he actually and his team are very qualified to bridge that gap and can actually find a way to link Gaza and the West Bank. But again, the details and how to get Hamas armed men out of the equation and emerge from Hamas, develop into some kind of a non-violent political party accepting Israel, accepting the United Nations Resolution 1947.
The amount of hatred, and it just morphed into, or it leaked into Western society also, but the amount of hatred between Israel and the Palestinians, do you ever think that will be healed? Because I can't see a peace deal of any sort happening while there is that absolute hatred for each other.
Yes, that is quite sad, actually. I mean, when Bibi Netanyahu and Israeli security took their eyes off Gaza and were focusing on the West Bank, that was sort of the settlers who were mostly American. And they are actually quite, I don't want to use a slang term that they are mad, but they are really bizarrely extremist. That their leaders are listed here in Britain as target for sanctions, almost like terrorists. So that is actually causing a lot of confusion and hatred within the West Bank, which should be sort of the body of the Palestinian state, of what's left of it. The other solution will be an emerging trend that would actually live all in one country, one peace, big Palestine, which was the idea of the fathers of the founder of Israel, Ben-Gurion. Ben-Gurion wanted one state really, but when sort of the whole thing developed into war and so on, came the partition resolution. But to reach there, well, that is very, very difficult. There's bad blood between them. And that's why I said Tony Blair's role of what happened in Northern Ireland, the Stormont agreement, the Good Friday agreement, if can that bridge. But it's a lot. What I don't think we're going to see it in our generation, sadly, because you need a lot of goodwill on both parties. You need time to heal, and you need another generation. The younger generation now, they had fathers and uncles and cousins who actually were killed and named, and you have cynicism and suspicion on the Israeli side. So sadly, I probably agree with you. It's going to take a very, very long time to get rid of the hatred and put some kind of understanding in the hearts.
What about the other players in this too? You have, for example, Iran. There's not a whole lot of love lost between Iran and the US, or Iran and Israel. Look at other countries of the Middle East. There's a great swell of, I wouldn't say not trusting, but not wanting things to move forward. If we were to get a true peace deal done with the Palestinians, do we need, first of all, to ensure that it isn't scuttlebutted by Iran and other countries, because they have vested interest in seeing the defeat of Israel?
If we roll back 2 years exactly from now, which as it happened, I was actually in the region. I was in Saudi Arabia just before October the 7th. And there was a goodwill. I was speaking to young Saudis who were actually filling the jobs that used to be done by Palestinians and Indians and Filipinos and so on. And they were younger generation who speak decades in the West, and they were embracing the idea of normalization with Israel, which is something unprecedented. This evolution and this modernization by Mohammed bin Salman. So in the Gulf countries, there is this growing idea, because they are traders, they want to trade, and that's how they get on well with the man who makes the deal, President Trump. So the Abrahamic Accords were just expanding, and then this warm relation going on behind closed door between Israel and between Saudi Arabia. And that's when Iran pushed Hamas and encouraged them to do October the 7th, and that set the clock back. So Iran will always try to play this game. Iran actually been hit badly by the Israelis, and by Americans intervened directly, and President Trump giving them warning. They've been softening something like sort of not enforcing women to wear hijab and all of that, but it's not really official. Whether they're doing it just temporarily or not, I'm not quite sure. But unless we have a regime change in Iran, they will always be there to cause trouble. And then there's the Houthis, who is supported by the Iranians. The Israelis had to activate the Northern Front again a couple of days ago when Hezbollah was trying to launch some rockets in Israel. So these are Iran's proxies. So we have actually to keep an eye on that. And that's again after President Trump, if he actually loses interest, if he focuses his eyes on another issue like Ukraine or so on, who is going to control these powers? Again, this is sort of something missing from the equation.
And then there's the question of Hamas. I mean, they're not going to ever go away. They are a terrorist organisation, and so what do we do about Hamas? How do we handle this? How do we manage it?
Well, I think Hamas sort of the Egyptians, when the Egyptians turned the screws on them, because they cannot just breathe without Egypt. I mean, they got 5 crossings within Israel and 1 crossing with Egypt. And obviously there are corruption and there are smuggling going on like any other borders in the world. If you got some corrupt border guards, then you got all this smuggling goods and weapons and so on. But the Egyptians now sort of are taking a very firm hand with Hamas. How long that would last remains to be seen. But if some deal, if the Hamas armed men, very hard headed ones, the terrorists, leaders, if they actually go into some comfortable exile and then evolve out of it another organization, maybe from the same people, they still maybe call themselves the Islamic Party or whatever they want to call themselves, but at least give up arms or and accept that they can divide the land between them and the Israelis, not to wipe the state of the earth, then okay, they can probably be part of the Palestinian National Authority. I can't see that happening without enormous pressure, cut the supply from Iran, pressurize Qatar to stop funding them, and I think probably the Americans can play this role there, and that actually might happen. Without that, without actually cutting the Iranian and cutting the Qatari money and getting the Egyptians to turn the screws on them, I don't see it.
Yeah, and then we go back to, again, what I said before about the hatred. The pointy end of the hatred plane is Hamas. And I just think there's going to be a major issue is that, I mean, whether you agree with it or not, there have been many unnecessary deaths in both sides. And if I was a friend or a relative of those people that had perished, I don't know how I would handle the idea of peace at the moment. It's a bit raw for us. Can you just tell me on Israel's plans for expansion, how does that affect that?
Well, I think this is a sort of expansion. From my study, I published several books, and my study over the years, there is accusation of expansion. There is, of course, sort of an ultra-right-wing Zionist movement of expanding the land, which departs away from the sort of earlier noble aims of Zionism, which is just established a national homeland in Palestine. But the majority are not for expansion. That's why, going back to the election, it's sort of not for expansion. And expansion happened because of wars started by Egypt and by the Arabs. It's not the other way around. 1948 started by Egypt and the Arabs. 1967 started by Colonel Nasser, and so on. So the expansion as a result of war. On the other issue of actually Hitler and stopping expansion, I would go back to the economics. I wrote a book on water called Water Wars, Common Conflicts in the Middle East with the late John Bullock, that published in 1993. And we noticed that the areas in southern Lebanon, when there is actually water supplies that benefiting the Israelis and the Syrians and the Lebanese, nobody fired a shot at it. There is actually a gambling casino in Jericho in the West Bank, which is owned by Palestinians and Israelis. And when the Israelis actually go there at the weekend to gamble instead of actually going to Turkey. And have you ever heard of demonstration or intifada or trouble in Jericho? No, because there are some business that both sides are benefiting from it. So going back to President Trump's wisdom of making a deal, if you start by joint ventures and economics and water irrigation programs that benefiting everybody, creating jobs for both sides, I think you can overcome the hatred when they realize they are benefiting from the same project.
Mm. What about Netanyahu's future? A lot of talk that he'll be arrested and stretched out on a rack and tortured, all sorts of things, because he does have I could probably say a checkered or probably a checkered past. That the talk is that the authorities would like to talk to him. Do you think that will ever happen? Do you think Netanyahu is as safe as the house, or do you think that perhaps one day some of the things will come back to haunt and to hold him accountable?
Well, he is actually facing one court case going on at the moment, which is corruption about building swimming pool in a villa, which he used taxpayers' money and so on. So that's still going on. If he found guilty, he can go to jail. There's other charges against him, which actually needs parliamentary investigation or someone bring prosecution. His negligence that actually led to 7th of October. The other thing is actually he's lying in some kind of military statement that use actually hiding some information and so on. And that can actually be, so he's got some political charges against him and some criminal charges against him. Depends very much what the outcome of it. And before many times, we actually wrote his political obituary, but it didn't happen. He's a survivor, he's a good orator, and he's got a big constituency. If you listen to his speech in the Knesset, people were criticizing him, saying, well, it's not very much about peace. He's not giving very good signals to the Palestinians or the Arabs. No, he wasn't. He was speaking to his constituents, the settlers, the right wing, the sort of Eastern sort of Jews, and the very, very hard right wing. They don't actually hear them, but they vote, give him big support. So the election will be coming soon next year, and then probably he would survive again. Unless by some miracle, the Arab side actually get the acts together and they get some propaganda and some public address, start the countries who have good relations with Israel, like Egypt, start opening actually visits by Israeli journalists and go there and so on, convince the public opinion that they actually wanted peace and normalization, not just cold peace, normalization. Then you can actually get and elect somebody that would win the election, a coalition that would actually hold Netanyahu to account. But without that, I can't actually see it happening, except for the criminal court proceeding that's going at the moment.
Who would you think would replace Netanyahu, and do you think they would be any better?
Well, they are. I think they were sort of. Ehud Barak was trying to make a comeback, a leader of opposition, and they are. You'll be surprised at who might emerge, because it is still early, and when you have, it is a very, very strange coalition there. So you get 2 or 3 parties sometimes actually hold the whole country to ransom. So one of the small parties might actually emerge. I wouldn't say a Bonapartism situation that nobody is actually able to get a majority and some strong man or woman would emerge. But you never know. Someone might emerge because of the electoral system and because of this bitter 2 years and the division going on in Israeli society itself. But let's hope someone from the liberal Ashkenazi liberal European, because again, the demographic change in Israel, the right-wing religious parties, they outbreed the liberal that we have seen them booing Netanyahu in Tel Aviv. But go out of Tel Aviv and go out into smaller places and settlements and so on. This is Bibi Netanyahu's constituency. So if someone emerges in a hang parliament, it will always be a hang parliament, but if someone emerges with so many scattered votes, then perhaps there'll be a future. Some new names we don't actually know other than the ones who have experienced in the past decade or 2 and not very successful in reaching settlement.
Donald Trump's very complimentary about Netanyahu. For Netanyahu's future, is that a good thing?
Well, I think the way, if you actually read his book, the Art of the Deal, especially the first 50 pages, he overwhelms his opponents with very generous offer that he totally sort of overwhelms him with praise and so on, and then he just puts them in his pocket and said that that's what I can give you and I can't prevent it from you. Or undermine him totally, like his first meeting with Zelensky, when Zelensky tried to be clever and he just put him there like a naughty pupil and gave him a lecture. So I think that he was playing sort of praising Netanyahu and so on in order to pressurize him later, to tell him, look, I can actually make you a hero in front of your people, and I can also turn the screws on you if I wanted to. So you need me, and you better toe the line. That's what my understanding.
It's been a pleasure, and I've enjoyed this conversation very much, Adel. Thank you so much for your time. Adel Darwish, British commentator, historian, author, Westminster Parliament reporter. Thank you very much, sir, and I appreciate it more than you know. This
Thank
is
you.
The World Today.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.